what's up, everyone? This is Silver Slayer. Thanks for being here. I am with Andy Shectman, CEO of Miles Franklin, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say. I'm sure a lot of you know the story that we're going to be uncovering. So, yeah, I'll give you Andy.
Good to be here, Bud. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a little bit. I've been on the road, and life just seems to be spinning around faster and faster and faster these days. In fact, since 2020, it's all been a blur to me. I'm not even sure what day it is. Even when I think I know what day it is, half the time I'm wrong. So appreciate the patience and good to catch up with you.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're both busy people. You know, I'm a single father, always trying to cover the days that I'm not watching her, and then you're traveling everywhere. What was that? You were in Boca with Vic's Ware, you were saying?
No, I was in Boca with Rick Rule. Rick Rule used to be the CEO of Sprott, and before that it was Global Resource. He's been a very integral part of my business, and I guess you could call him sort of a mentor to me for many years. I've had the good fortune of being able to work with all of his clients all the way through from Global Resource to Sprott to where he is now, basically running a family office and a media company. And that was 4 days at the Boca Beach Club down here in Boca Raton. And then I sponsor my good friend Vic Ware, someone who I truly love as a friend and respect as a analyst and as a person. He had a road show.
Oh, wow.
He was traveling in a Winnebago all around the country. So I flew into Austin, Texas, met him there, spoke at his show. Then I and his wife drove his Winnebago 6 hours to Oklahoma City, where we spoke there a couple nights ago, and just got back 2 nights ago.
Wow.
Here in Florida again. It's kind of been emblematic of the way things have been for me, whirlwind all over the place, but good to be home, glad to connect with you, and happy to chat with you.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. That's always one of my dreams, is to like take this, public and go places and travel and meet these people in real life and go to these conventions.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool because you see firsthand the impact that you make on people. When you sit here and stare at a screen, you sometimes wonder, did that come across the right way? People understanding what I'm trying to say. They think I'm talking my book. You wonder. Mm-hmm. And then you meet people in person and they tell you their stories and how, things that you're saying and doing actually have profound impact on people. And you just hope that impact is in a positive way, upon a positive manner and not a negative one. And so, but it's very cool to get out there and actually talk to people. Last couple of years, it's been easy to hide behind a computer screen. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed being at Boca Raton symposium for Rick and speaking on a big stage and talking with people, and then caravanning around Texas and Oklahoma with Bix, and a little bit more intimate, and really getting a chance to talk to people, even have a couple of beers together. It was a cool deal. It's something that I think is very rewarding when you get a chance to get out there and, talk to people in person. It's a very different, it's a different thing than talking to people this way.
Oh yeah, you mentioned one of the most important things that I always try to reflect upon is, sometimes it's easy to get lost behind the numbers. Like, I have 56,000 subscribers. It's easy to just look at that number, but to actually imagine 56,000 people out there, are listening to me, and it's almost, I don't even think the human brain can fathom the reality of that, that's all those different individual people listening, taking in, having their own opinions, influenced. And I think that's one of the hardest things about being a channel, especially when you start to get bigger, more responsibility, you have to portray the message, because everyone has different financial situations, different exit strategies, has more or less silver, so you have to be careful, because what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Well, that's why I've always talked about the way that I accumulate metals, and both gold and silver. I have, the message that I've been talking about over the last year or two mostly dealing with de-dollarization, the potential move away from the petrodollar, the ramifications that will have on the dollar if Saudi Arabia ditches the dollar as the sole settlement currency, which is what makes the dollar the world reserve. And a lot of people don't even know that anymore, that it's the protection of the Saudi kingdom that does it. And my message has moved away from my original thrust with gold and silver. I started in this industry 33 years ago when I was 19 years old. My dad and I started a company together on a wing and a prayer. We come from absolutely nothing. And he understood how important it was to save. His best friend, the Franklin and Miles Franklin, my dad's middle name, Miles, loaned us $60,000 to start the company out of nowhere in a tiny little one-room office in Minnesota. And here we are 33 years later, having eclipsed $7 billion in sales without a customer complaint. U.S. Mint authorized resellers, one of only 27 in the world. Reputation that I think is the best in the industry, something I'm really proud of. But it was founded on a promise. The way that I look at gold and silver, it was founded on a promise to my father. When I started the company as a very young man, he said, look, we're going to do this together, but there's one rule, and you're not going to make the same mistakes I made in my life. I said, okay, I can deal with that. What's that one rule? He said, you're gonna put something away for yourself every 2 weeks when you get paid, or I'll fire you, period. I said, if that's the only rule, I can deal with that. So for 33 years, now he's been retired for 20 years, but he won't fire me any longer, but I've honored my promise to him. And for 33 years, every 2 weeks, I bought something. Never missed a 2-week period, not once, ever. Whether it's one silver eagle, or a mint box, or 5 gold coins, or whatever it is.
As long
and
as...
for me, it is always, yes, it's been wealth. And that's called cost averaging, where you smooth out the uncertainty curve. But for me, I have always looked at gold and silver as wealth. Wealth that I hope I never need to use. Not just for an emergency, could be an opportunity. But if not, I'm damn glad I have it. And as a single father, you will understand, I wonder if the silver you're putting away in the back of your mind is really something for you to use yourself or to give to your little girl someday.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that it should be looked at. Wealth that has lasted the test of time, that I often say has lived through 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, and every pandemic, and it's still immutable wealth.
Yeah.
Wealth right now that is trading at under half of its all-time high when all other asset classes have been blown to hell. So I don't know, I think in general that the way that I look at gold and silver, period, is of wealth accumulation and preservation, although the message is changing a bit, and I look at it a little bit more defensively right now in the light of a dollar and a system, a Keynesian system that could perhaps be waning. And but nonetheless, when we have our discussion, just understand that anything that I talk about relating to silver or to gold is about accumulating and preserving wealth, and not about getting wealthy.
Right.
Because it is wealth.
Right, exactly. You can't compare. No amount of fake money can equal something that's real money. And that's what I try to, let people know is, no matter who says that 1 ounce coin is worth what is irrelevant, because the coin's value is the 1 ounce inside of it, not the price tag. And once you truly understand that, it's a lot easier, because if silver goes down to $10, or you won't freak out because you're like, that $10 is irrelevant. You can't put a price tag on that. But I wanted to stop real quick because you said something very interesting that I've heard personally firsthand, and you said, your reputation. I have never, I speak with people all day long, emails, comment section. I've never had so many people say so many wonderful things about a company than I have with you. When I first brought you up, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know, I've never heard about you, So when I said that, when I was in context, I was saying, the lady placed, which we'll talk about in a second, she placed the order with Miles Franklin. I don't know who that is, so I'm assuming it's a smaller mint, so it probably is going to be pretty difficult to fill that order. And everyone was like, blah, 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 Miles Franklin's so great. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't saying anything bad. I was just letting you know, like, I never heard of you. But the moral story is, so many people have reached out, like, you got to try to get in contact. They are, they're so great, good guys, and it was just so cool to hear so many people back you up that that really genuinely believe you guys are. It's a great company. So just wanted
You
to
made
say,
my day, man. Thank you
yeah,
for sharing
seriously,
that with me. That's incredible.
yeah,
Thank you.
you have a
Appreciate
great
that.
reputation. So, yeah. So let's go into this situation. So let's do it like this. I'll throw out what I know, and then you could either correct me or add anything else. Okay.
Sure.
So
Sure.
this is how the story is for me. Lady from Texas, billionaire, wires you $50 million. No invoice, no email, just sends it. $50 million, over 1 million ounces in silver, 900,000 in eagles, the rest in constitutional silver and gold. Then you have 90,000 eagles, and you say now you have to source over 800,000 more allocations till August. What is your thought? What was your original thought? Like,
So all of that is correct. The one piece that's missing is Bill Holter. So
okay,
one of the things that's made Miles Franklin successful is working with outside representatives. And we work with quite a few. Like yourself, although we don't have a relationship, people like you who have YouTube channels. And maybe I can twist your arm someday, but Bill is not only a representative of my company, he's a very good friend. And someone who I've spent a lot of time with, traveling and having beers with and talking friend to man, friend to friend. And I have never met anyone that is more genuine and sincere. Take him or leave him, he is who he is, and you always know where you stand with this guy, always. There's no pussyfooting around with him. He's a cowboy, says it like it is. Some people don't like that. I personally love it. I like to know where I stand with someone. I like someone who's real. And he told me in no uncertain terms on a Friday afternoon that we're going to have a $50 million deal. Now, I've been doing this for 33 years, and those things just don't happen.
Right.
And so you hear it all the time, and okay, Billy, sounds like it's, that's cool. I'll believe it when I see it, more or less. Although I believed him, I didn't believe it was real.
yeah, the order,
So,
the lady sending the order.
Yeah, blowing smoke up his ass, more or less. But I think Bill believed it to be real. Now, Bill is, he's got a good BS meter. And so, the more I talked with him over the weekend and everything, he was really certain it was going to happen. And, okay. So Monday rolls along, the end of the day rolls along, and I call him and say, didn't receive a wire today. He said, yeah. The client went to the bank, was told that she couldn't send the wire because it has to go to the main branch. Now, the main branch was 4 hours away, somewhere near where her sister lives. So she, on Tuesday, the next day, was going to drive to the bank, stay with her sister if need be, and get it resolved. So she drives to the bank. It's a small bank I've never heard of, and she spends hours at the bank in a room where they're giving her the full court press, trying to talk her out of it, and ultimately tell her because the branch manager isn't there, it won't go today either. So, she's getting really angry.
Oh, yeah.
And because she initially tried to do this remotely on Friday with no luck. On Monday, she goes to the branch. No, you have to go to the main branch. On Tuesday, she spends all day there and is aggravated not only because they're putting the heat on her, trying to talk her out of it, but because after wasting a whole day being pressured, they tell her, well, the branch manager's not here. So as she leaves to go spend the evening with her sister, she tells the bank, I will be back tomorrow, and if this is not done, then the next call is to the regulators and to anyone else that I can call that is going to make life difficult on you. And she's very angry. So Wednesday comes, and half the day goes by. I'm beginning to believe this is not going to happen when my operations gets a phone call from the bank. And it's a good thing I didn't answer this call. The first question that they asked was the logical one, and that was, can we confirm your wire instructions? Now, when I get a call from someone else in my operations saying that, such and such is on the phone right now with the bank, and they just asked us for our wire instructions, this actually might be real, my ears perked up. The next question that they asked my operations department was, is your company big enough to handle this trade? Now, this is a bank, none of their business. If I answered, I may not have been as polite. The whole thrust of the client wanting me to talk about all of this was mostly this, that it took almost 4 days, 3.5 days for her to get her money released by the bank.
Yeah.
And it did come Wednesday afternoon. And that the message was it's a whole hell of a lot easier to deposit money than it is to withdraw money. And this is before you see anything that is even remotely close to something like a bank run or real issues that would incentivize people to pull their money from the bank.
That's the scariest
So
thing,
yes,
man.
we get a wire. I had never spoken with the client. We spoke with the bank and gave them wire instructions, but not even an invoice or an email saying, yes, upon receipt of your wire, we will do this, which was really astonishing to me. But we see this a lot where, people who spend $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 get much more agitated and concerned about protocol or lack thereof than someone who's spending 7 figures, in this case 9 figures. It was no big deal for this person just to wire the money. So that is true. Up until this point, you are spot on. That's exactly what happened.
So that's when I was breaking the story, and just like you, because I covered the story over like a span of like 5 days, 6 days. Every time I get an update or I saw your interview, and then originally I was just like you, like, is this lady like serious? And then she comes out and says, hey, I'm real, and not only am I going to be placing this $50 million order, I'm planning on placing several others, even up to $1 billion. Is that true as well?
That is true. There have been discussions. Nothing is concrete.
Right.
But I will tell you that everyone has been paid. Everything has been delivered to the depositories, with the exception of those allocations that we took out into August, where I have been promised future allocations from the U.S. Mint. And it went really very smoothly. In 20 hours, in 2 days, I was able to source over 900,000 silver eagles.
Wait, so you pulled that off, basically?
Yes, 100%.
Wow.
We had 90,000.
Wow.
We are U.S. Mint authorized resellers, so we had 90,000 in stock. We were able then to source the rest. I was able to source the rest really through my own operations, who did the majority of it.
Wow.
And one other source that I would more or less call the godfather in this industry, who is very, very, very in the shadows. Most of the people in this industry don't know him. I've been around for 33 years. I've met a lot of people, and this is a person who knows everyone. He also told me that in 50 years he's never seen an order this big for physical metal. My banker told me she's never seen a wire that big. We've done $7 billion in sales. The biggest order I have ever done personally prior to this was $9 million. This is not something that you see every day. We did $600 million in sales last year, and I bet the biggest order we did is $5 or $6 million. So while there are large orders, that's very unusual to see this kind of size of a transaction.
Wow, I don't think the viewers understand how impressive that is. You pulled this off in 2 days. Like, that is impressive.
She wanted it done before July 4th. This was the July 4th holiday, so she wanted it done, and we were able to do it. And
congrats.
We were able to get everything but the August allocations delivered already. All the distributors paid, and it's all done in 2 days, literally all done. And it surprised me as well. The question that I would get asked most often is, do you have the money? Obviously, the answer was yes. So, but I'll tell you, this would not be an easy thing to do right this moment. Premiums on Eagles.
Yeah, that was my next question. Yeah. If this was generics or something, I'm sure this would be a much different direction. Just with, I mean, the U.S. Mint itself is in a messy situation. There are legal trouble, or not legal troubles, but there are laws. The secretary shall not pay more than the LBMA spot price, but other mints can. So, and then the premiums growing. So yeah, I couldn't imagine all Eagles with this situation.
Well, and a lot of people have asked me that too. Why all Eagles? Because the premiums are so high. And I said to Bill, "You sure this is what you want to do?" I mean, if she would have bought things that weren't just Eagles, she would have blown out my entire inventory. I mean, we probably had about 50 million in inventory, would have been gone in 10 seconds. But she only wanted Eagles, and there's a reason behind that. And if anyone out there has watched Bill Holter, you'll know that he talks this way quite a bit. His partner is Jim Sinclair. Although he is a representative of my company, he's also a representative of a company with Jim Sinclair called JS Mindset. And Jim has been around for a very long time. He was called Mr. Gold in the 70s. His father's name was Murray Seligman, a very famous trader who actually helped unwind the Hunt Brothers position.
Wow.
And evidently, they believe through there are family members in Jim's family that are very high up in commercial banking, where he has been told, and he has told me this personally, Jim has, Bill has, and they have spoken about it publicly, so I don't mind saying that they believe there'll be 2 resets. They've been told by a family member who's very influential up in commercial banking, said there'll be 2 resets. You could argue the man-made reset, the first one, is underway right now, and that will fail. And when the second ensuing Mother Nature reset takes place, the U.S. government will confiscate everything that is not American in origin. Now, I'm not telling you I believe that. I have a lot of stuff that is not American-made in origin. But after discussion with the client, Bill expressed his beliefs, and that's the direction the client wanted to go. But it's getting very difficult. The U.S. Mint is the model of inefficiency. Not only is getting silver Eagles becoming vastly more difficult, the premiums north of $12.50 or $13 being $7, $8 higher than anything else, used to be 50, 60, 70 cents higher than the Maple Leaf, the Britannia, the Blueberry, the Philharmonic, the Kangaroo. Now it's $4 to $6, $7 or more. But what's really unusual to me, which is something I can't wrap my head around yet, is what they just said to me last month. As an authorized reseller, we get the information as it comes out, and they told us that they are curtailing production of all gold by 50% into the second half of the year, and subsequently, all gold Eagles and Buffaloes have gone up 80, 90 bucks an ounce in the last month, and it's following the same pattern that the Silver Eagle did. Now, what's so unusual about this is that in all of the business we've done in the last 3 years, which in total is well north of $1.5 billion, 95 or better percent of it, maybe 97, has been in silver. There has been a renaissance in silver, starting with the silver squeeze, of course, and even before that into 2020, where the demand for silver has outpaced gold, 10 to 1 or more. And so no one's buying gold, yet they're curtailing production of silver or gold into the second half of the year by 50%. You put your conspiratorial hat on and you wonder, are they trying to make it far more difficult for the average person to, escape the system? Are the banks making it more difficult for the average person to escape the system, like my client?
Right.
Maybe is this why they implemented bail-ins and gating legislations? Are they preparing? Do they know what's coming? I don't know. Maybe they do, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Just imagine someone on the Comex, like the Hunt Brothers situation. All that. So I read that they own up to 77% of the global silver supply. I don't know if 77% is an actual number, but they owned a lot. All those contracts turn into physical delivery. What if? And I was reading this article actually. I think his name's Patrick Heller. He mentioned, what if you get denied? You get denied requests to get turned into physical delivery. I mean, if the Comex vaults are already getting emptied and everyone tries to turn that into physical, is there a possibility that the whole thing just collapse? Or?
Yeah, well, I think that is a distinct possibility. The stockpiles of registered silver are as small as they've really ever been in a long, long time. I mean, there's I don't know the number. I saw it the other day, but it's ridiculously small, and they trade many times more than what is eligible registered to be delivered on any given day. But I think that is what will happen, and before there was a major run on the exchange, I think just like they did to the Hunt brothers, they'll change the rules in midstream to protect one
Silver
another.
Rule 7.
The Hunt brothers noticed the exact same thing that's happening today, that there are far more paper contracts. The term rehypothecation comes into play, where things are sold over and over and over and over again, but there's far more contracts than there are bars backing it. And so what they did is they bought up all the contracts and stood for delivery. Well, they changed the rules. You can be short unlimited, but there's a certain amount long that you can be, and anything over that is illegal. You have to sell it. So they will change the rules, but it is in essence a default and loss of credibility, very much akin to what we saw on the London Metals Exchange with the nickel default. That's a 140-year-old exchange that has never defaulted on a contract, but that's exactly what they did. They made a Chinese billionaire who had a massive short position in nickel. They made him whole. They didn't bankrupt him. And then they invalidated all of the trades on the other side of it, screwing a whole bunch of people. In essence, in my opinion, invalidating the credibility and the history, really, of this exchange. The way these exchanges work is that if something like that happens, first it's the broker. If the broker can't do it, then it's the members of the exchange that coalesce to make the exchange whole to maintain its viability and credibility. That didn't happen, and I think they showed a page out of the Comex playbook where if something like this happens, where if you see a massive run, where a battle maybe between the hedge funds and the industrials like Elon Musk or Sony or Samsung, all these companies that need silver in this digital and green world we live in, the need for physical silver is growing. But when you look at the amount of the value found in silver in a world where asset prices are you can't even find price discovery in most asset prices, that they're blown sky high, the hedge funds realize it. And I think you're going to see what has been a very clandestine drawdown of physical supply out of the ETFs, out of the London Metals Exchange and off the Comex. I think it will become not so opaque and much more in your face. And when there is a rush to pull everything out, that's when, like that, they'll change the rules. They'll make it a cash settlement. It'll be force majeure. And at that point, the Comex really is exposed for what it is, a massive, massive scam.
Wow, everything it just gets me so happy because everything you say is stuff that I've been making videos about. Like, you just named like 5 different things that I made an entire video about, and every point you made is exactly, I'm so glad we're on the same page. It's so good to hear other people, like-minded. Wow.
Right on.
Wow, that's awesome. So going into, I wanted to ask this. The rest was junk silver. How I know junk silver is scarce. That is, a lot of it's getting melted down, unfortunately, or just less in circulation. How are you able to pull that off?
It's the same way, in business, in life, everything's about reputation. And we've been around the block for over 33 years. I know the people to talk to. It's not easy. It wasn't easy. It won't be easy going forward. Junk silver is very much emblematic right now of the old saying that there is no bull market like a metals bull market, because most other bull markets, like cryptocurrencies, like equities, are centered around making profit. You're taught when you make all this profit, pull the original investment out, put it somewhere else. When you look at metals, no one ever wants to go back into fiat to redeploy it somewhere else, because it's about concern. It's not about greed. It's about fear and concern. The higher the price goes, only strengthens people's grip on it. The crazier the world does the exact same thing. And I think a lot of the people who own junk silver are owning it to prepare for an eventuality that they see coming, even if the manipulation of the metals market does not jibe with their worldview. They know that it will at some point. They know that there is a game being played by the commercial banks, maybe even by the governments and the central banks, that is being used to misdirect people away from the monetary metals, because gold and silver represent the canary in the mine shaft. Gold and silver, it's like pulling the curtain behind the Wizard of Oz and seeing it's a little old man talking into a big microphone. And that's exactly what the dollar is. It is, I think, smoke and mirrors, so to speak. They lie to us about inflation. They lie to us about unemployment. They lie to us about money creation. They lie to us about bail-ins. They lie to us about a lot of things, or bailouts, I should say. And so they're also going to lie to us about the real value of gold and silver, because if it were to really be set free and not be priced by the futures market, rather than just by the physical market, the price would be much higher.
Yeah.
But what would that say to about the strength and the health of the dollar? And I think that's really the name of the game, is that they want to make the dollar seem much stronger than it really is. They want things to, they don't want to incentivize people further to run out of the dollar, creating and exacerbating what is and what ultimately will be an exodus from the dollar. And maybe this is why you see the U.S. Mint behaving the way that they are, with not making readily available both gold and silver, and really being way overpriced in comparison to every other major mint in the world.
Wow. Yeah, man. You just said so much that, man, I love talking to you. This is so refreshing. I love the way you speak. I love the points you bring up. You said so much that I want to cover. I don't even know where to start. First, the most important is silver's a direct threat to the dollar. Direct threat, and you would see why they would try to villainize the Hunt brothers, or try to stop this lady purchasing $50 million and make it so hard. And I do think that silver's true value will come out once, like you said, it's right in your face, blatantly obvious, the supply deficit, where we can't manipulate the price. JP Morgan spoofing. I feel like it goes much deeper, like you said, even the government. But I feel like the year 2025, 2026 is when you won't be able to deny it. I feel like we'll be deep enough into the Green New Deal by then. Electric vehicles, every automobile company by the year 2030 is going to be an EV, they say. Just the amount of silver we'll need by then, how many billions of ounces, who knows? I feel like by then, silver's natural price, the critical role it plays, is going to be undeniable. That's just my opinion. Obviously, a wrench could get thrown in and things,
Let me give you mine, and I think it's similar, only it might be sooner.
Oh, really?
So like I said, I often ask people, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency, and so few people can ever answer it. It used to be backed by gold, and at the end of World War II, gold was appointed or anointed the world reserve currency, taking over for the pound sterling. And the U.S. said to the world, we will peg gold at a rate of $35 an ounce. And you can exchange your dollars for gold anytime, and we'll give you $35. It was a good deal for the rest of the world. It was a good deal for us, because this is why we owned most of the world's gold. So they would give us their gold, and we'd pay them $35 an ounce for it. We'd hold it safely, and they would buy our treasuries with the proceeds, which would finance our infrastructure, which would then give them a return for our non-interest-bearing asset. After all, they could exchange it for $35 an ounce, so why not give the gold to a safe place? Allies are strong, they just won the war, they're not going to screw us. They'll give us, buy it back at 35, and in the meantime, we can exchange it and buy treasuries and make a return on this asset. And it was this way until the end of the Vietnam War, when President de Gaulle from France realized that we were printing more dollars in treasuries to fund the war than we had behind, backing it at Fort Knox. So he sent warships over from New York Harbor filled with dollar bills and said, give us back our gold. And we did. And they bled down half the gold at the Treasury, nearly. And Nixon closed the gold window in August of 1971. And that was, at that point, the dollar was backed by nothing. But it was 3 years later that Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and said to the Saudi kingdom, we'll protect you. We will provide you ammunition and munitions, rather, and we will have your back militarily. But for that, no one will ever mess with you. You have to denominate oil globally through OPEC in dollars. And they said, okay. And so for the last 50 years, nearly every country on the planet has had to own dollars to buy oil, nearly 100%. It's created a synthetic demand. It's called the petrodollar. This is the world reserve currency because of our protection of the Saudi kingdom. Well, the day that we left Afghanistan with our tail between our legs, with people hanging from the wing of a transport plane, the country that I grew up in, I'm going to be 52 in a few weeks, you didn't leave military people or allies or troops behind enemy lines because they couldn't make it to the extraction point. You didn't do that. We did. And I think it was a humiliating time for this country, certainly for the administration. I was very distraught by it, like really upset. And there's no coincidence in the timing of this announcement. The day after that, after the world is saying, what a bunch of fools, Saudi Arabia announced a joint military cooperation agreement with Russia. Let me say that one more time.
Wow.
A joint military cooperation agreement with Russia. You can Google all this, and you will see that Russia is now protecting Saudi Arabia. The day after that, Russia announced the same thing with Nigeria. The day after that, Nigeria's third or fourth or fifth largest OPEC producing country. The day after that, they announced that they had hypersonic ICBMs on all of their nuclear-powered submarines. Now, this is the technology we don't have that the State Department said they're concerned about. These are the missiles that go Mach 10 up in the atmosphere and hit the ground at the speed of an asteroid. You can't knock them down. That was their way of saying, don't fuck with us, the way you did Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, when they both said they wanted to sell their oil for things other than the dollar.
Wow.
So we fast forward, we see that Nigeria has already agreed to sell their oil to China for yuan. It is a yuan-denominated bond called the petro-yuan bond. The petro-yuan bond is immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. This is why the Shanghai Gold Exchange has delivered almost 95 times more gold than the Comex has over the last few years, because countries like Iran, who want to evade U.S. sanctions, will sell their oil to China for the petro-yuan bond and immediately convert it into gold. This is how they sidestep it. So you have, for the very first time in 50 years, someone else protecting the Saudi kingdom, which gives us our exclusive dollar hegemony. If we back up a year and look at 2020, we see the rise of the Chinese Belt Road Initiative. A lot of people don't know about this either. The Belt Road Initiative is the largest infrastructure project ever attempted in human history. Now, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to connect these dots.
No, I'm engaged. This is awesome.
You're going to like, and all of these things I invite people to Google. The biggest infrastructure project in human history called the Chinese Belt Road Initiative. It is connecting Asia and Africa and parts of Europe. It's the old Silk Road. It is connecting 75% of human population. 45% of global GDP before industrialization, not just by bridges and roads and maritime channels and railroads, but also digitally. So you're connecting 75% of human population digitally. The need for silver is extraordinary. And the U.S. is not part of it. And all of the contracts on the Belt Road are settling on the new Chinese digital yuan. The digital yuan, which I believe will be the backbones of the new world reserve currency, I'll get to that in a moment, has already done close to 20 billion in successful transactions.
Oh, wow.
They did it at the Olympics, and all of the trades on the Belt Road are settling in the new digital yuan. So we see subsequently things like Russia, obviously, selling their oil for ruble and for gold. We see Nigeria selling their oil to China for the yuan. We see Saudi Arabia announce that they are contemplating, if they say it publicly, they're already doing it, selling their oil for yuan in China, the yuan-denominated bond, which they can convert to gold. We've seen other types of relationships where Hungary and Turkey want to join the Belt Road Initiative. And in fact, Turkey is about this close to doing it. Hungary wants to sell their buy Russian oil and not use dollars. We see India that just came out. We're their largest trading partner that said all domestic and international trades will be done in rupee, no longer in dollars. We see Saudi Arabia, who just came out and said, we are contemplating joining the BRICS nation. What? Really? And that's not talked about in our media. And again, when they say contemplate, that means they're doing it. Google it. You'll see. There's a picture of all of the leaders of the BRICS nations standing arm to arm. Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa. Now you've got Iran just joined it. Venezuela just joined it. You're going to see Turkey join it. Saudi Arabia is going to join it. You're talking 90% of human population. All of it in settling their trade outside the dollar. This is a huge, huge, huge deal. I'm going to tell you how I think this all happens and what possibly could happen in a second. If we go back 1 year before 2020, we go to 2019, we see gold being reclassified by the Bank of International Settlements as the world's only other Tier 1 reserve asset. Why did they do that? Everyone in this industry thought it would be special drawing rights by the International Monetary Fund, which is about 200 countries around the world, who that same year came out and said, we want a new Bretton Woods. We want a new system. On their website, no one talks about this. So you see this thing where 80-90% of the world's population is moving away from the dollar, striking unilateral trade deals, usurping the dollar, selling their commodities for anything but the dollar, joining together in a conglomerate, coalescing in the BRICS conglomerate, whereby you're talking north of 80-85% of human population that is all moving away from the dollar. So how does all of this happen? How does it all break? I think this is how it potentially could break. We see that in the last 3 years, the U.S. government printed more money in the last 3 years than they had printed in the entire history of the country.
Are you still there?
Yep. Oops,
Okay.
Cut out there.
Yeah. It's
Where'd you lose
blurry. Okay. You were talking about the U.S. printed the last 3 years more money than it ever has. Okay, now you're back. You're back.
Right.
Okay.
In the last 3 years, they've printed more money than they have in the history of the United States before that. All of this money has blown up asset prices to all-time highs. Stocks, bonds, real estate, cryptos, all of it inversely correlated to a rise in rates. You look at the Federal Reserve, who has no intention of getting tough on rates, because if they did, they would have raised the federal funds rate higher than 2.25%. They would have started to sell off their balance sheet, quantitatively tightening, as they call it, which they really haven't done whatsoever. And if they really wanted to get tough on rates, they would raise the federal funds rate above the bullshit rate of inflation that they call 9.1%. There was a study that just came out the other day from the National Economic Bureau, or whatever their acronym is, that said the 13.6% inflation in 1980, if measured by today's metrics, would be 9.1%. Paul Volcker, back then, raised the federal funds rate to 19.75% in 1980 to stop inflation. But what would that do now? So the Fed, who says they're going to get tough on inflation, pussyfoots around and raises it to 2.25% and hardly sells anything off their balance sheet, because if they start selling mortgage-backed securities and U.S. Treasuries interest rates spike, they don't want to be written about in the history books. So here's how it happens. You got asset prices to the moon, all inversely correlated to a rise in rates. You see all of the countries moving against the dollar and coalescing and formulating trade routes, infrastructure, and deals that are usurping the dollar completely and totally. Then the U.S. does something that I wonder, was it intended or unintended? Are they completely idiotic to not know what was going to happen, or are they maniacal? And do they want to blow everything up and realize that let's find a villain? It's no more foolish for me to say what I'm about to say than Biden saying Putin caused inflation. Inflation is always an increase in the money supply coupled with a decrease in productivity. Think about the last 3 years. More money has been printed in the last 3 years than the history of the country combined, and everyone was paid to sit on their ass and not work. That's inflation. No one's producing stuff and more money is chasing less stuff. That's inflation, not Putin. So there's a villain, right? Because if the Fed really were to raise rates high enough, they'd blow everything up, right? Stocks, bonds, and real estate. pop, poof, gone. So you weaponize the dollar and you kick Russia out of SWIFT. And as the world reserve currency, it's not our job to tell the world who can and can't use it. That should be for the world opinion, not for us to dictate. And everyone else is thinking to themselves, are we next? China has just sold $100 billion of our treasuries in the last 6 months. They have their eyes set on Taiwan. You think they're going to buy our bonds anymore if they are waiting to be sanctioned and have their assets frozen? Of course not. They're all de-dollarizing, moving away. So here's what happens. You incentivize the world to move away by weaponizing the dollar. You push Russia right into the open arms of the Chinese and their CIPS system, the cross-interbank payment system, which mirrors the SWIFT. They have all of these infrastructure things put into place already, and all of the countries are starting to coalesce with them. You have Saudi Arabia says, we are going to join the BRICS nations. Google it. You'll see it. And when they announce it like that, it's done. It's just a matter of how it rolls out. And if you think our president, who can't even chew gum and walk 4 feet without falling, went to Saudi Arabia to beg for oil, I have a bridge to sell you. He didn't go there. He hasn't even gone to Texas and the Texas-Mexican border yet. Yet he goes to Saudi Arabia to ask for more oil when we are specifically blowing up their way of life by going completely green. No, that's not what it was. It was to beg for them not to join the BRICS nations. But here's how it all ends. Here's your great reset, right? I always thought Klaus Schwab was an idiot until I thought of it this way. Asset prices up here. Debt up here. Inversely correlated to a rise in rates. What do? You kick Russia out, you incentivize the world, and then Saudi Arabia says to the world, hey, thanks for the memories. It's been a great ride for the last 50 years, but we are joining the BRICS nations. And our brothers and sisters, Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, now Iran, Venezuela, all of these other countries are joining together, and we're going to open up oil sales in all of these currencies. Now, Nigeria is part of the Belt Road Initiative. They're being protected by China and Russia. Russia is protecting Saudi Arabia. They're all part of the BRICS. We're not going to go do to Saudi Arabia and Nigeria what we did to Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. If they make that announcement, that simple announcement, remember that every country on the planet for the past 50 years has had to hold dollars in order to buy oil. Every one, right? So what if they make that announcement and all of those countries, just like in the movie Trading Places, when one of the Duke brothers says, sell, Mortimer, sell, because everyone's going to dump dollars. Because if they don't have to own dollars anymore to buy oil and they watch all of the countries start to shed dollars, it'll become a hot potato. And one will sell, the next will sell, the next will sell. And all of a sudden those dollars come home, creating massive inflation, maybe hyperinflation. What happens to interest rates in a hyperinflationary environment? They go to the moon. What happens to stocks, bonds, and real estate? Like that. So in a matter of seconds, not only does the dollar crater, there's pillar number one, but stocks, bonds, and real estate crater at the exact same time as they're inversely correlated to a rise in rates. So a great reset would be nothing more than incentivizing the world to move away from the dollar and Saudi Arabia to ditch the dollar for sole currency. But it gets worse. Last week, the BRICS nations just announced they are issuing and have already developed a new world reserve currency.
Oh, wow.
Google it. China and Russia said on behalf of the BRICS nations, we are issuing a new world reserve currency. Now, here's what I think ultimately will happen with that. The RICS and BRICS, Russia, China, India, South Africa, these are all the biggest gold-producing countries in the world and the biggest accumulators of it in the world. You have the Belt Road Initiative and the digital yuan, which has already done almost 20 billion in successful transactions in the last 2 years.
Wow.
What better way to roll out a central bank digital currency than on the heels or on the back of one that's already been tested? All of these countries will pledge gold to it, and it will be pegged to a new world reserve currency using the central bank digital currency distributed ledger technology. Gold is now a tier 1 reserve asset out of nowhere. Remember, they levied gold to a tier 1 in 2019, and they've all been accumulating it since then, right? So put all the pieces together. Chinese and the BRICS nations could very quickly issue a new currency on a distributed ledger, pegging gold to it. Now, they won't make it convertible because all from France prove that convertible currencies convert, but they'll peg it, and they'll use the distributed ledger technology to see, there's all the gold that all of us countries have pledged to. You can see what India put in, South Africa, Brazil, Russia, China, and it's all pegged. And then Saudi Arabia, to put the icing on the cake, starts to sell oil and other currencies. The global divestiture of dollars would be immediate, and the rise in rates would be immediate as that inflation starts to overwhelm the United States. And that's when the other assets, stocks, bonds, and real estate, all collapse.
Yeah.
It's your great reset. This is why you buy gold and silver. It's not to get wealthy. It is because this time, as we were talking about earlier, this time it's not the same as before. This isn't the same crash as before. This isn't the same problem as before. For the first time in all of our lives, we are facing losing the world reserve status.
Wow.
And what that means is far greater and far more intense than anything we've ever lived for, should it potentially happen.
Wow. Wow. That's why, wow. Thank you for all of that, because, man, I just feel like I'm a student and you're like the professor, like, because I love learning about this stuff. You know, I literally sit here all day researching, you know, looking into things, and just for you to give me all this information for my audience as well, that's, wow. So it could be a lot sooner.
Here are the 4 or 5 things that
sooner.
your audience should Google. 4 or 5 things your audience should Google. 1, dollar reclassified as world's only other tier 1 asset in April of 2019. 2, the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative. 3, Saudi Arabia and Russia strike a joint military cooperation agreement. 4, Russia and Nigeria strike a joint military cooperation agreement. 5, Saudi Arabia contemplates joining BRICS. 6, China and Russia roll out new BRICS world reserve currency. And then everyone knows about the weaponizing of the dollar, number 7, so we'll leave that one alone. But those 6 massive moments,
yeah.
You could do 7, IMF asked for a new Bretton Woods. They all point to the same thing, de-dollarization, global de-dollarization. And if you look at all of these countries that are going to do it, you're talking between 80 and 90% of human population.
Wow.
And this is a whole big different deal.
Wow. I remember before COVID, you know, COVID took everything, you know, kind of out of left field, but it was the Saudi Arabian oil fields, you know, getting bombed, the Iran tensions, the U.S.-China trade negotiations. All that was such, you know, the biggest news, and then COVID happened. So all of that kind of went, you know, kind of just blew off the radar from everyone. But, yeah, I just didn't know it went to this extent that you're mentioning. So I definitely could see, you know, a triple-digit silver before 2025, 2026. You know, I'm coming from it simply just from, like, the Green New Deal and the silver shortage, but it goes much deeper and more sinister. Wow. That was just so much.
When you talk about where silver could go, you know, Keith Neumeyer is a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
In Las Vegas
I cover a lot
ago.
I love his, I cover so much of his stuff.
So we were in Las Vegas a month ago. I asked him this again. I saw him in Boca 10 days ago. Asked him again. I said, Keith, what is it coming out of the ground? 7-to-1, Andy. 7-to-1 is the global mining ratio. He doesn't ever think about the gold to silver ratio. He told me that. He thinks about
it's
the mining
irrelevant.
ratio.
Yeah.
Right, and so you have a price of 90-to-1, yet a geologic ratio of 7-to-1. Silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal. It's very near the surface. So big deposits were found a long time ago, so much so that companies like Keith, First Majestic, which are primary silver miners, only account for 35% of the silver that comes to the market. 65% comes from companies who have no business mining silver.
Yeah.
They're mining copper, gold, or something else.
Copper, yep.
It's
a byproduct. Yep. Gold, lead, zinc.
Right.
They find silver, they'll take it, but they're not looking for it. Yeah.
So if it's depleting in nature, but it is massively growing in industry and green and digital applications, on top of a massive renaissance in monetary demand. Think about most assets or commodities have one demand source. You know, copper is almost entirely industrial. Gold is almost entirely monetary. Silver is both. It has a massive monetary demand and even a bigger industrial demand, and it's a depleted asset.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why they're trying so hard to make people think that it's it's an asset that shouldn't be accumulated because the price action alone is so
Yeah.
counterintuitive that, maybe that's part of the deal, that it's a lot more strategic of an asset than we're being led to believe.
I just made a video about that yesterday. I think I titled it, what was it? So I don't remember, but I made a video just talking about that. Silver stackers will get the last laugh. Silver stackers will get the last laugh, and that's the truth. Wow.
Couldn't agree more.
So I think we should wrap this up here. It was great talking with you. We could talk after, a little after, this interview ends. But just wanted to say thank you. I hope everyone watching was taking notes and enjoyed all this. And I thought this was just going to be covering the situation about the lady, but this was so much more and so much, this was awesome. Hope we could talk more about this
I'd
stuff.
love to come back anytime you want. I enjoyed our conversation as well. You're a very bright guy, and
thank you.
You seem to have a good grasp on where we're headed, and that's good. So keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for letting me be a small part of it.
Well, thank you. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you soon. This was Silver Slayer. Peace.